Hello everyone and thank you for joining me. Today I finally managed to get around and have some fun with the Jinhao 80. Forever in catch-up mode. The hiatus that I am in won't help much either. But before going into the fountain pens, just wanted to let you know that I started using a new camera. Hopefully, this will solve some of my issues that I had with the focus and especially with the overheating. If the quality is a little bit worse than usual, I apologize. It might take me a while to learn this new camera. If the quality is better, I apologize for my apology. And going back into the Jinhao 80. Last year, you gotta give it to the Jinhao. They were pretty much on fire, as they're saying. And they release a lot of great little fountain pens for extremely affordable prices. And one of these fountain pens was the Jinhao 80. At the price they were selling and still sells at, was very hard for me to resist and not buy a couple of them. Actually, I probably might have went a little bit overboard. Now, I didn't got all the colors that they had because when they were released, I kind of jumped on the black ones pretty quick. And then later on, when they introduced the colors, I got the colors that you see in front of you. Now, I've been using this one, having so many, I could afford to actually use one and keep one for the review. And these are the two ones that I probably focus the most on. Of course, this little pen brought a lot of controversy as well. Some loved it, some hated it. I am in the camp of loving it, and yes, while from the outside, this pen looks a lot like a Lamy 2000. There are really nothing alike. No one will be actually fooled about the Lamy 2K or about the Jinhao 80 passing at as the Lamy 2K. Even as a blind test, I can easily tell these pens apart, even just by weight. And while the shape is similar uh, with the Lamy 2K, that is where the similarities stop. Materials, build, and how the pen actually feels in hand makes these two distinct fountain pens. And well, I'm happy it exists. More options for people to find their perfect instrument. It's a good choice. But at the same time, as a Lamy 2K lover, let's put it this way, I'm not afraid this pen exists. The only similarities, as mentioned, by applying the Gestalt principles, that's the only time when people might get confused by these two pens. Otherwise, completely different, easy to tell them apart. With that aside, let me go through the fountain pen quickly, and then we'll do a fill up, a writing sample, and hopefully we'll get a nice sketch out of this today. The pen, as you can see, has a pretty classical shape, a sub-classical shape that obviously copies the Lamy 2000, and not a lot of features on the pen. It definitely has all the visual elements that Lamy has. Top finial, it's just a faux finial, not necessarily an actual finial. It's just part of the cap, unremovable. A nice aluminium clip that has might not be as functional as the Lamy 2000. It's still a rocker. The only thing is you have to actually press at the edge of it, and you could actually get the rocking mechanism to work properly. If you actually hold it here and you just press on it, that won't work. On Lamy 2000, if you no matter where you press, that rocking mechanism will work properly. You don't have to press just at the edge. So better construction, but this one sort of does it as well. Sits a little bit higher, and if you press just on the edge, it'll work just as nicely. Doing the shirt test, clip works very nice, very smooth, no issues there. This is what you see out of your shirt, and removing it works just as nice, not an issue there. The metal clip, it's solid, nothing stamped, and that helps with the smoothness that it has. Continuing down with the barrel, there's a portion that it's a little bit straight and then tapers down to a flat end, and the end we do have, I assume, a brass insert that functions as finial. Pretty nice. I like it that on the color pens this matches the gold trim, and on the black pen it actually completely blacked out with a black clip as well, and again functions the same way. The cap, it's a pull push cap, works very nicely. All of them actually are working very nicely. I've seen no issues with any of the pens that I have, and it has a very satisfying click. And once you remove it, you will be greeted by a fairly decent lengthy section, good grip on it, no issues with it. The section ends with a gold band trim that, well, matches the trim of the pen, in this case gold. And then a safari styled nib that I actually like a lot. I really like these nibs that Jinhao are making, especially their extra fine nibs, which they are actual extra fine in my opinion. And the feed, that again, it's Lamy Safari styled as well. And these feeds, based on the coloring that it has, it looks that they have been tested for flow, which is very nice. All of them are having ink on them. Now, I don't know if they just, get them dirty with ink a little bit just to give you the feeling that they tested it, or if they are actually testing them. Looking inside the cap is very simple. I took the endoscope video from one of the black pens. We do have an inner liner insert, and hopefully, it works very well and hopefully works the same on all of them. Never had an issue with the blue one for as long as I've been using it. The pen has never dried up on me in the months that I've been using it. The pen in hand feels actually very nice. I like it. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. The length is good. The size is just perfect for me, unposted, and the balance for it, it's nib heavy. It's nib heavy, which I like in a fountain pen because it makes it naturally point down. However, if you don't like that, the pen posts very beautifully, very secure, just like an Lamy 2000. And the length makes it even more perfect. I will be honest, I do prefer this pen posted rather than unposted because it brings a little bit of weight to it. And the balance shifts right in the middle of the pen. It's beautiful. Like I mentioned, I will most probably prefer this. No, I always prefer this posted rather than not. Removing the barrel, very simple, not an issue. Very smooth. You actually have metal inserts on both the barrel and the section, so I doubt you'll ever have any issues. And having a look inside the barrel, very simple, very smooth, no issues there. Everything seems to be as it should be. And all the pens do come with a converter. I actually much more prefer these converters over the Lamy style that Jinhao used to have, because they can be taken apart and they can be serviced as needed. Now, a few things to mention with this fountain pen. As you've probably seen from some reviews, one of the greatest things that people love about these pens is that you can actually use the Lamy nibs. These nibs slide out and you can put the Lamy nib very easy. Everything works actually very well. One thing that I noticed, I try to use other Chinese Lamy style nib and they don't work. Actually, the fitment is much more tight and it tends to break the feed sometimes, or you have to really fight to remove if you try and put another type of Chinese styled Lamy Safari nib on it. Like Urine, I believe it's one of the brands. Hero, there's another brand that makes them. They fit if you really push them, but you'll have issues removing it, and you might damage the feed in the process. Another thing that I noticed with this feed is on this black pen that I have, I try and put an extra fine Lamy style nib. However, I had an issue with that. I end up actually putting a fine nib, and this one is fine. I mean, as in it's working fine. But the extra fine, the issue that I had with it is that because the tines were a little bit thinner, and most probably this feed is not a perfect match with the Lamy nib, it actually pushed up on the tines and my tines were slightly split apart, so the alignment on the tip of the nib was off and it was not ideal because you weren't really getting an extra fine line, you were getting a very juicy medium line. I removed that extra fine nib and I put it on my Lamy Safari, and I grabbed the nib from that one and I put it here, and with the fine seems to work just fine, and most probably with any other larger nib will work just as well. It's just the extra fine that I had issues with. The other thing to mention, on this black pen I tried to actually add a converter from Lamy, a black converter to match the black pen. I actually was trying to make a joke, as in if I have a Lamy nib and I have a Lamy converter and they're both branded Lamy, will this make it a Lamy or a Jinhao? Unfortunately, Jinhao took care of that. The opening on the Jinhao converter seems to be a little bit wider than the actual one from the Lamy. So basically, you can't really push. I mean, you really have to push, and it's very tight. And I'm afraid that if I keep on pushing it will actually enlarge this more than it should. And as a fun fact, if I try to put a Jinhao converter in here, actually it's very loose. It doesn't grab at all. So definitely converter wise and cartridge wise, these two pens are not compatible. And the last thing to mention on these fountain pens, because I've seen some confusion and people asking, all these pens have metal trims. So basically you get, well, the metal nib, a metal end, and these, even though they are painted or powder coated in black, this is not plastic, this is actual metal. So all of them have metal threads on metal threads, which is very good. And yes, if you weren't able to tell by now, the brushing effect, it's a brush for this actually comes from the mold or the injection mold that they used. And it's okay, it's not too bad. You can definitely see it though, and unfortunately sometimes it's misaligned, and that might be kind of the only negative thing that I have on this fountain pen. And overall, this is the fountain pen, not much else to say. As you probably seen, and hard to hide it, yes, it's a beautiful pen. It's an amazing pen, I would say. I love it. I don't hate it. Even if you hate it, if you put your emotions away for a second and you think logically and just focus on the actual pen, it's kind of hard to dislike it. It ticks a lot of check marks for a lot of people, and I fully understand why it's being liked and loved so much. For today, I wanted to use the Platinum Carbon ink. As usual, cap off, barrel off. piston all the way down. Hopefully I can reach in the ink, put the pen in the ink. Slowly go up halfway, or at least until you see ink coming inside the pen. Then go back down. And then slowly go back up. The pen takes a pretty good feel. You still have a little bit of air gap, but hopefully this will be enough for what I need today. And the pen cleans up actually very nicely, no issues even with the ink. However, the nib seems to be like it's getting stained a little bit, but water should take care of that when you wash the pen. Before going into the writing sample, there was a quick plan of change. Basically, as I was finishing the drawing, kind of an idea hit me and I want to try it out. And as such, the black one has the platinum carbon ink. The green one has an ink that I haven't used before, and I hope I'm not going to be disappointed and ruin the drawing for today. And this one has Private Reserve Avocado Green. And this one has the Yamabudo ink in it. And this one had before Dryden Designs Blue Black. So this is the Private Reserve Avocado. And this is Jinhao 80 Extra Fine. Fountain pen. The nib is very wet, like really wet. I don't know if it's the ink or what, but beautiful flow. And I think it is the ink a little bit because I see it feathering a little bit, so makes it look bigger than it should. Again, hopefully I'm not gonna be disappointed in the drawing, but the reverse works beautifully, a little bit scratchy, but you definitely get a very fine line and seems to work beautifully as well. And this is same pen, but this one has a fine line and you can actually see a difference. And this ink has a pretty good flow as well, but it doesn't seem to feather, at least not on this paper. And you definitely get a thicker line, even though the one above it, because you feather, it almost look exactly the same. And on reverse, you definitely get a nice finer line, scratchy as well, but it works without a problem. Now I'm worried about this one. All right, so all these three fountain pens, they have very good flow, very wet nibs, and most probably is because of the ink that I'm using in them. This one it's an extra fine as well, and it has the platinum carbon ink, but it's way drier, like really dry. So proof that ink matters. And the reverse, most probably it would work, but it doesn't work with this ink at all. A little bit worried. Not sure if I'm gonna be using all of them. I'll definitely give it a try. I'll start with the black one and see what it goes from. But let me dive into the sketch, a little bit skeptical, and I'll let you know what I think of this fountain pens. This was another fun drawing and I actually kind of like the end result. Maybe a little bit crazy with all the colors that I decided to use, but I think I maybe sort of pulled it off. Okay, maybe. There was a moment towards the end of the drawing, or what I thought it was the end of it, when I dropped the blue pen on the paper and did some unwanted marks. So that was not the end. So I had to get creative and added some additional blue as the skyish of the whole drawing. In the end, I was kind of glad to go with 3, 4 pens and 4 different colors for this drawing. I managed to find one bad-ish nib in all the Jinhao 80s that I had. Easy fixable, but I guess this gives us an insight that not all the nibs are excellent, and there are chances you might get some problematic nibs that needs to be fixed. The problem that I had was with the nib on the black pen. The pen was so dry because the tines were really close together and ink was barely trickling between them. I thought that it was the platinum carbon ink at fault, but no. A little bit of work in the middle of the drawing and I got it flowing properly again. It got so problematic that it was barely putting any ink on the page. I even went pressing fairly hard. I did took advantage of it though. I like the light lines it gave me even when they were interrupted as I was building the outline of the drawing. I'm curious if you can notice the difference when the flow started to be better on it. What do I like about the Jinhao 80 fountain pen? What is not to like about it? I mean, it's cheap, very well built for what you are paying for, and the converter is included. You don't have to buy a separate one, and the flow of the ink on these nibs is amazing. Well, for the most part, at least. And all that for less than 10 Canadian dollars per unit. And since I am also one of the persons that do like the design of the Lamy 2K, the shape of the Jinhao 80 fits right at home in my likes list. Now I perfectly understand that this is a personal thing, so I understand if you don't like the design of the Lamy 2K, but if you don't like that, you most likely won't like the Jinhao 80 either. Also for me, the fountain pen feels great in hand, and I like their decision to go for the Lamy style nib and feed. Not that I dislike the nib on the Lamy 2K, I think I might be between the few people that actually likes the way the nib writes and looks on the 2K pen. What I don't like about the Jinhao 80, this is an extremely short list. But there is one thing that I'm not very happy about, and they could have easily made it better. The seam on the pen from the injection molding process kind of ruins the aesthetics of the pen a little bit. They could have charged $1 or $2 extra and still keep it under 10 Canadian dollars and did a sanding of that pattern after the fact rather than include the effect on the sanded material in the mold. That's the only thing that bothers me very little. And the last thing, I guess, since I discovered it, more like a caution rather than dislike on my part, based on the nib issue that I had, prepare to potentially have some issues with, well, the nibs. If they are too dry, you will have to open up the tines a little bit to get it flowing again properly. The thing that I'm very impressed about is that all nibs write and work pretty decent on reverse, even though there may be a little bit scratchy. Overall, I do like the fountain pen, if you can't tell yet, and I am happy Jinhao made it. I don't think it'll pass as a Lamy 2K anytime soon, or that the people will be fooled by it. I see it as an additional option that ticks a few additional checkboxes for people, And that's a good thing. Options. I always love options, as many as possible. Hell, I even see it as a fountain pen that will increase the sales on the Lamy side, at least for their nibs department, since a lot of folks are buying extra Lamy nibs to fit them on their Jinhao 80 pens. I mean, I even seen people asking if you can fit a Lamy 14K nib on these pens. And yes, you can. I tried it. The Jinhao 80 feels a lot like a fountain pen that Lamy should have built by themselves as either a modern take on the Lamy Safari or maybe a new lineup next to the Safari as another new entry fountain pen. But considering that they would have probably not included the converters with the fountain pens and the prices would have probably been a little bit higher, I'm happy they didn't do it. And I applaud Jinhao for going for it. And even though they basically put designs from different fountain pens from Lamy, they end up having a unique fountain pen that everything just works visually and functionally. And that's all I had to say about this fountain pen. If I have missed anything or you have any other questions, as usual, please leave a comment below and I will try and get to it as soon as I can. Thank you for joining me today and I hope I will catch you next time. Wish you all the best and a wonderful day or night, whatever you are. Take care. Bye.